My name is Lance Alexis. I'm the director of the Disability and Access Center. And I'm so happy to be here today to welcome all those who will be viewing this presentation. This is part of our continued offerings to increase the educational support of students. We really wanted to focus on areas that the students and their parents, for that matter, have questions about as they transition to college and as they matriculate through college, especially related to their disabilities and the way in which they interact with the campus, being a person with a disability. This is the third part, or the third offering. There will be one more in April. And this question really centers, or this concentration really centers around self-advocacy. It's often asked, how does one advocate for themselves? What's the best way, especially on a college campus? So I couldn't think of a better person to address that than Bethany Hoppe. So we're very happy to have her here. Bethany Hoppe is a communication studies lecturer here on MTSU's campus. She teaches public speaking, voice diction, women in leadership, and small group communication. Bethany is a TEDx Nashville speaker and utilizes her public speaking and writing platform for educational outreach in support of people with disabilities, earning their higher education, associate's, or technical degrees to achieve independence and equal rights. Bethany owns Hoppe Consulting, a consulting firm that specializes in career voice training and supplements with life coaching. Today she will be presenting her presentation, Self-Advocacy, Success, and Reaching Graduation. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you. Hello, everybody. I wanted to start out today by asking you to keep 3 different questions in mind as I speak. And the first question that I have for you to keep in mind is, do you feel like you are able to successfully self-advocate? Okay? And next, do you feel like the self-advocacy that you are doing for yourselves is recognized by the people in your life who may be like your life leaders, such as professors, ministers, doctors, or perhaps even family members? And then finally, do you feel like self-advocacy that you are doing for yourself in relation to those people who might hold leadership positions in your life will translate beyond that and beyond college into the workforce and out into the world beyond high school? Advocacy is public support for a recommendation or a particular cause or policy. Self-advocacy is the action of representing oneself or one's views and interests. And then finally, advocacy groups, such as the Office for Students with Disabilities, even here on your campus, represent, maintain, and implement basic rights of students with disabilities so that they can function on campus and have the necessary tools to succeed as a college student. They can, through the proper channels, provide or bridge computer technology to you, provide note takers, extend testing time, gain permission for you to use recording devices in your classroom, or to assure that you have a classroom that's accessible, that's part of your schedule, alongside you working together to make gains for you to get a successful degree in a successful manner. Beyond that function, through those proper channels, you're really on your own, and I believe that this is appropriately so. College is one of the only real-world realms where people with disabilities can function academically, socially, and physically in a setting that is more of an organized safety net, if that makes any sense. Beyond college, world matters will often take precedence and priority over you, and your job will be to be able to self-represent yourself when you're not the priority. And there are very few safety nets when it comes to the corporate world. Now that does sound scary, and it's okay because really it's actually a gift. And its ultimate goal for all people with disabilities that came before you is independence, especially those who were literally barred from society, education, and even basic human rights for decades, if not centuries, through institutionalization. And so what we have before us is a great opportunity to utilize, at an excellent time in our life, self-advocacy tools. Now, I may sound like I'm exaggerating when I say the people that came before you really wish they had these advocacy tools and ability to speak for themselves or even have access to education, but it's really not an exaggeration. Today, we're going to talk about 3 different concepts. One of them is self-advocacy, and why it's important to you. Pointed truths really about what skills you're going to need to advocate for yourself and remain professional while getting what you need. And then 2, how you as a student should represent yourself to faculty and others that have or hold leadership positions within your life. And then finally 3, how faculty should be interacting with students who are representing themselves, especially with the assistance of OSC. Okay, so let's start with self-advocacy. According to the author David Test, self-advocacy is first one's ability to understand one's own disability and to be aware of its strengths and its weaknesses, and then to be able to articulate reasonable need for physical or academic accommodation. In other words, to me, that means that it's self-determination. To get anywhere in both the collegiate and the occupational life, people with disabilities must, 1, state what their disability is and how it impacts their work or their school performance. And 2, identify any instructional accommodations that may be needed that directly relate to that specific disability. And 3, make strategic arrangements for those accommodations with regular university classroom teachers, notably through your Office for Students with Disabilities. There are 3 primary tasks that have to be checked off a list in order to successfully advocate for yourself or on your own behalf. Whether you have a disability that you acquired later in life or the one that you were born with, it is vital to understand exactly what your disability means to you personally, not in medical terms, but to you. You are the only one that can really clearly determine what your strengths and your weaknesses are or what your limitations might be. This means knowing what you can and cannot do, even though you may have the heart and the desire to do it, while also at the same time knowing that you don't want to take unreasonable risks. You have to know your own limits. My motto has always been that if you can do it, do it. If you can do it, do it. Never wait for someone else to do something for you. And that sounds, like inspirational speechy time, but not, in essence, it really isn't. Don't wait for other people to do these things for you. If you are able to do them safely, accurately, and intentionally, you want to always be able to do those things for yourself. This is very different from forcing yourself beyond your capabilities, where you put yourself and or others at risk. For example, if you know that you need transportation and you have to plan for that transportation 24 hours in advance, or you will not have a ride to school or work, and that not going to work and not going to school is going to significantly impact your success, then your number 1 priority on the days that you have to go to class or work is to create that transportation 24 hours in advance. I never advocate for pushing for an excuse based on disability any more than I would advocate for somebody to put themselves in physical harm's way to get where they need to go with unreasonable risks. Just as importantly, if you truly cannot get somewhere, show that you tried. This is very important to instructors, especially on campus. Show that you were prepared and that your work was actually finished, or that you pass along your work to somebody that you trust as a token of commitment that you had every intention of being in class that day or meeting that work deadline. This is called self-advocacy in action. It eliminates blaming yourself and others or even a disability for something that does or can't happen, because things do come up. Does it sound like it's a lot of extra work? Yes, it does. And does that sound like it may be unfair compared to maybe your classmates or coworkers who have maybe the luxury just rolling out of bed and going to class or showing up? Yes, it does. But there's a formula as to why it is this way, at least in my own theory. if you are a minority whatsoever, the current time-space reality that we are in right now, measuring stick is probably that of a healthy, white, heterosexual male. And that means, for now, that if you are not a healthy, white, heterosexual male, then you must give, in my own theory, about 250% more than the other guy just to get noticed. And this sounds like a very unfair truth. But in actuality, it is the thing that motivates or gives us momentum for our success and continuation. And I know it doesn't sound fair, and it doesn't sound fun, but there's a silver lining. Your hard work and your every effort of going that extra mile for yourself will and does pay off in the long run. And one of the ways that it does is through what I call a quiet gain of equality. It's a quiet gain of equality. As technology continues to advance and our culture continues to become more diverse, the basic task of being measured on your own self-worth and work and contribution will accumulate to mean more than the current measuring stick. And I would say that the good news is that that process has already begun. It is my personal belief that this change, while given bursts of success through demonstrations or mass gatherings, has actually occurred consistently over time by those people with disabilities or perceived marginal aspects, very quietly, by individuals that just got out of bed and worked it out for another day. That, as I said earlier, gains momentum. And you being here in college with a program organized enough to do a lot of the legwork for you or with you, like OSD, is proof of that progress. Now that brings me to last two ingredients of self-advocacy. Articulating what physical or academic needs that you may have, and going through the appropriate channels to exercise strategies towards your success. Luckily, being a college student, you do have OSD to help you with everything from generating paperwork to testing to supporting you in case faculty or administration refuse to recognize your documented classroom needs. You still have to get signatures. You still have to provide proof of accommodation to your instructors. But in the scenario of being a college student, someone has your back if or when anyone in a leadership position in your life does not accept or acknowledge your needs, or worst case scenario, try to exacerbate those needs. The key to success here is your participation. The OSD offices will not ever do it for you, but they will stand beside you and see that paperwork gets honored and that the latest technology is available to you so you can succeed. Now that you have a foundation of what self-advocacy is, found in identifying your own strengths and weaknesses as they pertain to disability, and then formulating a plan through articulating your needs, and then strategically meeting those needs, let's talk briefly about how you interact with your instructors or bosses about those needs, because I think that this is very important. How we convey what our needs are makes or breaks how a situation will play out. I can tell you from experience as an instructor that most professors regarding any student are far more likely to work with them through emergencies, illnesses, deaths in the family, or other things that life throws at us when they see that that student is trying to work with the instructor. Okay? Now campuses across the nation, and we hear this a lot in conversations between instructors, are loaded with students who they come to class with very high personal expectations of what they think they should be getting from the course, the college, or the instructor. And one way that they illustrate this to their professors is often through a lack of communication combined with an expectation that if they're absent from class or they miss an assignment, that they have the right to either skip that work or not get demerits for not showing up. Now these are students that instructors flat out, we don't enjoy working with this type of students. And these type of students generally become upset when they find out that big things actually happened the day that they were gone and that they're not allowed to get the professor's notes. Okay? These are not students we enjoy to work with, again. And instructors are much less likely to be understanding when it comes to allowing for make-up work. So let me emphasize this based on that information, that this is a universal mode of communication with your instructors. Okay, if you are a student with a disability and your method of articulating your needs based upon disability comes from a place of disrespect or disrespectful expectations that are unreasonable in and of themselves, you'll find your instructors much less cooperative, and that you will be much less successful in your classes than you'd like to be. You've put yourself into a category alongside many, many other students that operate off of lack of self-responsibility. Now, an upgrade to this would be that if you have a disability that requires physical and or academic accommodations, your best outcome is to be based on how you communicate with your instructors, just like the rest of the student body. Now, I'm going to give you some examples. I recently gave my students an assignment to write an introductory paragraph for their informative speeches, and they were to be used in the following class. And there were some students who were absent that day. One of them emailed and said that they would be absent and understood it was an unexcused absence. Another emailed that they would be absent, but that they would have documentation from their doctor's appointment, and they attached their paragraph for class to the email to show that their work was done. Another didn't email at all. They were simply a no-show with no homework finished. Now, the following class, upon everyone's return, the student who emailed that they would be gone with no excuse attended class the next time and said nothing. Now, the student that emailed their homework when notifying me of their absence came up and gave me the documentation they said they would have, and then asked if they could give their presentation, their paragraph. And they did. They stood up and they presented it in class. Now, the final student that didn't email and was a no-show still wasn't there the next class day. So which one of these do we think got ahead in this assignment? Yes, I did allow the student who had communicated through their absence to present their paragraph. They received feedback from the class. They were not counted as absent based on that documentation. It works the same way when it comes to representing yourself to instructors regarding your accommodation needs. Students who do not bring OSD paperwork to me as an instructor, particularly at the beginning of the semester, are to me simply another student like any other. Presenting me with OSD paperwork after maybe below average midterm grades come out, it helps, but it doesn't erase the first half of the semester, okay? But it does clarify some things. It applies to the remainder of the term. But students who come to me and complain that they couldn't keep up with notes and that I didn't allow them extra time to do homework through a reader or provide alternatives to traditional PowerPoints are kind of like the student that was the no-show with no email and no documentation and no proof of homework. Now, those students who went out of their way, they knew and understood and respected the basic academic policies of not only my class but of the university by showing that their work was done and by providing documentation to maintain positive attendance scores. Those that blew things off scored lower on their speeches, and that was not because they got tagged for being absent, but it was because they missed out on practice opportunities, follow through, and gaining tools that offered them the ability to have a better presentation through workshop and experience. Again, if you can do it, do it. The last thing I want to talk about today is a little bit about how faculty could and should communicate with students about their accommodation needs. It is the responsibility of a faculty member, regardless of rank, to accept and meet the academic needs or allow for the physical needs of a student when that student has presented them with the appropriate paperwork. This does not mean that instructors are at whim and mercy of students with disabilities or anyone else with other needs. It just means that with your paperwork, you are protected from instructors preventing you from either extra time for tests if that's part of your accommodation, and it means that through your paperwork, you are protected from instructors placing unequal emphasis with your physical limitations. Some examples: instructors cannot prevent you from taking one of their exams for 40 minutes in a quiet location like the OSD office or testing center, while the rest of the class took the exam in class for 20 minutes, as long as you had pre-arrangements with your instructor according to your paperwork to have that exam sent out. If you're a film production major and part of your classroom accommodation is that you've indicated you cannot lift heavy equipment, you are protected under that paperwork, under the same grading guidelines as other students, to have assistance with equipment if you're filming an assignment. So, in other words, with your signed work and paperwork in hand, you are entitled to access the right to those access rights to both academic and physical accommodations to get your work done. Anyone in a leadership position in your life that is either denying those rights or disregarding the approved paperwork or intentionally creating obstacles to your success, they do need to be dealt with, but through OSD, not you one-on-one by yourself. However, with that said, it's very important for you to be very, very informed about the whole process and what you're going through, and for you to fully participate. Here at the university is where you're going to learn the skill sets that you're going to need to help self-represent yourself in anti-discrimination situations in the world of occupation in corporate America. To do this successfully, it really means what we started out saying, that you have to know your disability, you have to articulate your needs, and you have to have reasonable strategies to meet those accommodation needs. And if anything goes wrong in that process, either by yourself or by someone above you, you are the one ultimately that needs to be most informed about the situation, and you are the one who needs to be most armed with alternate solutions to the many, many problems. That alone is going to vault you into success academically. It's going to provide retention. You're going to graduate. You'll have a more professional way of dealing with conflicts and problem solving. And it will get you much, much further even socially as well. So I'm going to leave you with a quote that you could put as your business self. Your smile is your logo, your personality is your business card, and how you leave others feeling after an experience with you becomes your trademark. And I believe in that very, very strongly, that if we can work positively with one another, whether it's instructors, bosses, physicians, family members, caretakers, whatever the case may be, we'll be much, much further along in our success, and that's going to continue the quiet equality gains that we would have. Thank you.